you all so much. What an incredible introduction, twice. It's such an honor and privilege to take over from Gillian. Gillian, are you in the room? Where's Gillian Doherty? Is she here? Not yet. Well, I was going to give her a big round of applause, but in her absence, I'd just like to extend my thanks to Gillian for really the startup phase of the AI Alliance for Scotland. And she's handed over the reins to me for the kind of scale-up phase. And as you've heard from my biog, I've done that a couple of times. I started an agency at the age of 26, grew it, scaled it to a few countries around the world, and sold it to EY. And in EY, they said, join our board and help us with our tech and innovation strategy. So I am absolutely honoured and delighted to be part of the scaling of the Scottish AI Alliance at what is now a really, really exciting time for AI globally as well as here. So I'm going to spend 20 minutes with you, and in that time I want to talk about how we put Scotland at the heart of the AI revolution. And yes, while there are no guillotines available, it is indeed a revolution. It's transformative, it's changing at rapid pace, and it's disrupting both our work, our leisure, and our citizenship. And it's so big and so all-conquering that it's hard to put a number on it. But today, the AI market is worth something in the region of $400 billion. And by the end of the decade, they're saying it could grow by another $1 trillion. And $1 trillion, for those of you who don't know, I had to look it up, is $1,000 billion. So we're talking about it tripling in size by the end of this decade. It's a huge area for growth, a huge area for industry. But our numbers tell us that we need to be part of that global story. We need to help accelerate our actions to ensure that it's ethical, responsible, and for the benefit of the greater good in Scotland. Now, the challenge with AI is knowing where it may go and what it will become. And although I'm not a futurist, I did actually, in the research for my book, AI by Design, I started by identifying 5 potential scenarios for living with AI before settling on the most likely one in order to build a plan of action. Now, it's a common rule of design thinking. It's called future back. You can't understand how to design something unless you understand the scenario for which you're designing. So, helping you design for that scenario, I explored a number of, some of them, quite odd scenarios, but I want to talk about them here today. So, the first one I called keep calm and carry on. This is the option of doing nothing at all. Just letting the technology of AI grow, shape itself with little or no governmental intervention. This could happen as we know it takes a whole team to create effective regulation. It takes teamwork and it takes lots of agreement. And I think that when we're looking at that today, I think that that is something that will be very difficult. Fortunately, I don't think that this option is going to happen because within the sphere of AI, we're already seeing a great deal of regulation happening. In fact, some areas may have too much. For example, there are hundreds of guidelines on AI ethics from major universities, global bodies around the world, such as the UN, the Ivy Leagues, the UK universities, the OECD. The list is endless. Cynically, you could say that for some organizations, it's a tick box exercise doing responsible and ethical AI within guidelines. But I think it demonstrates that we're at the early stages of AI. More positively, it shows that the world is watching and all those regulatory bodies feel the need to help. So as someone who helped create the UK government's guidelines for the web back in 2005, I think the power of standards will help us here. While I don't think we're going to get a single global agreement on regulation for AI anytime soon, I do think that we can work within our smaller groups globally and use standards to drive consumers towards companies who do adhere to appropriate regulation. For example, companies who audit their algorithms, who publicly demonstrate their fairness, their responsible AI. I think they'll gain more customers than those who hide behind their black boxes and don't open up the information around their data. Another option I considered after keep calm and carry on was if AI takes over the planet, it really won't be a problem, as will all have escaped to Mars. Now, one of the most intelligent individuals on the planet, Elon Musk, has said that this was a serious consideration for his development of SpaceX. However, the idea of escaping AI doesn't really have legs with that kind of possibility, I don't think. The spend on preparing commercial spaceflight to Mars is already running into the tens of billions of dollars. While it may well happen, technology will be required to support that effort. So what you're doing is you're running away to Mars with AI. So it makes very little sense, you'll be pleased to know. The most controversial, however, scenario was not this one I explored. Are we living in a simulation? Now, I hear chortles and laughter, and we should. I agree. However, there are some very, very intelligent individuals backing this scientific movement. A number of people believe that we are living in a simulation. And for those who aren't familiar with the video game The Sims, it's effectively about us not really existing. It's very existential. We're part of a game. Now, some scientists have run data exercises to say that whilst it is possible, the processing power to run such a simulation would be bigger than the entire universe itself. So, although an interesting and perhaps fun concept, the evidence is extremely flimsy at best. So, and non-existent at worst. So I don't really take this option very seriously at all. So far, so good, right? They're a bit odd. The fourth scenario is called the new Luddites. This relates to people's reaction against technology manifesting in small communities, isolating themselves from technology and AI. Now, the USA already has examples of prepper communities who are distrustful of government, distrustful of technology, and all about their privacy. Historically, we've seen many groups flee persecution or oppression from the Pilgrim Fathers, the Huguenots, and the Jewish diaspora, who went on to create their own cities or countries. Now, I think this is probably feasible and likely will happen in small places, but I don't necessarily think that it will be a significant impact. And I don't think by ignoring technologies powered by AI, we will change its direction. The future scenario of AI that I decided was most compelling, I dubbed the urge to merge. Now, another Elon Musk scenario, he likes to cover all his bases, doesn't he? Another Elon Musk scenario was, he believes that we should be augmenting humanity with technology powered by AI. And I'm so with him. What does that mean? Well, we've already begun merging with our mobile devices, often glued to our hands, so the first thing we pick up in the morning and the last thing we touch at night. Probably to my husband's delight. But anyway, true merging with technology, however, would involve physically connecting people with data, either through technology or assimilating technology. Now, I do think that the metaverse is a step in that direction, using devices to give haptic feedback. I think Google Glass was terrific when it came out, a wee bit too early, but the Meta Ray-Bans are a great step in that direction. Now, neurotechnology is the discipline of physical to digital connection, and it's moving extremely rapidly. The company that Elon Musk has founded is called Neuralink. And effectively what that allows people to do is it allows them to tap into technology directly into their brain. People can already talk without speech. We can listen without ears, and we can walk without legs. The US military has funded research into prosthetic limbs that are mind-controlled, and I read recently about someone who can turn their thoughts straight into text. If we consider that the human memory is one gigantic hard disk, we could therefore compete much, much better were we to be able to assimilate more data with technology. The human condition is driven to innovate, to learn, to grow, and to compete. We upskill ourselves to get better at our jobs, to have a better lifestyle, and companies like Neuralink could provide that ultimate extension. Now, I think that the idea of brain hacking to be highly unlikely anytime soon. But when I was doing my research, I looked up cosmetic surgery. Believe it or not, we are more likely to have 1 or 2 people in this room who've had cosmetic surgery than to not. And so one day, starting to add devices like NFC chips or biohacking ourselves with CRISPR or DNA gene editing is probably going to be a likely scenario. A friend of mine recently passed away from motor neuron disease. And you referred earlier, Nick, to the fact that you can download your voice and use synthetic media to support that terrible, terrible disease. Now, I think that is absolutely incredible. I also think what was incredible is the mRNA delivery mechanism behind the COVID vaccine. We're already looking at delivering medical improvements through that delivery mechanism. I think the human determination to innovate and self-improve means that it's just a matter of time before the urge to merge becomes more and more mainstream. And please do, out of all of those scenarios, let me know in the Q&A if any of you believe anything else. Mars, simulation, let me know. But I'm banking on us just having more of technology to augment society. So, what does that actually mean for us? Well, it means the adoption of AI is coming thick and fast, and perhaps more than that, it's about creating AI products that support our work and life. Now, I think that as these AI products improve, it will quickly begin to replicate human capability and start to replace some of our mundane tasks that we currently have. It's estimated that up to 30% of the next generation, 30% of those jobs that they currently do today will be replaced, or a large component of them will be done by machine. So a number of reports talk about call center servicing, warehousing already being at risk, and professional roles such as accountants, lawyers, and even programmers. We are finding repeatable tasks already being automated. So I'll just pause there because one creative industry, Nick, that I don't think will be replaced anytime soon is comedy. £1 for everyone who says ChatGPT up on this podium over the next couple of days. Maybe a fine, actually. But I'm going to make it. I'm going to do it. So are you ready for an AI joke from ChatGPT? Okay, I said, please tell me a joke about AI. And it said, how many robots does it take to change a light bulb? None. They just outsource it to a human. Okay, awkward laughs, fine. Perhaps it knew something that we don't yet know. So look out for a very unfunny Edinburgh Fringe segment, probably coming soon, written by ChatGPT. Of course, there is an upside. The rapid growth of AI will also create new jobs. Now, many of those jobs will be highly skilled, high-tech jobs that we want in Scotland. The shift happens with every industrial or economic revolution. There were no train drivers until the steam engine was invented, whilst at the same time there were fewer horse breeders and fewer blacksmiths needed. So innovative companies will create these new jobs. What I want to do is I want to say, how do we do that here in Scotland? When I think about providing answers to questions like this, apart from hurting my head, I like to look at parallels in history and what other countries and industries have already done. I'm a sucker for a good story, so here goes. That's James Watt, an incredible Scot, one of the greatest, known for revolutionizing the steam engine in the 1770s. His innovation supercharged the existing engine, because there already was a steam engine, but his tweaks literally powered an entire industrial revolution. His own story is absolutely fascinating, and I think it has some parallels with AI for Scotland. He was from Greenock, here, near Glasgow, and as a child, completely fascinated by mechanical devices. His first job was as an instrument engineer in Glasgow, and after spending some time here, he moved to London to learn his trade a wee bit better. He returned to Scotland and found himself repairing a very complex astronomical instrument at Glasgow University, and whilst working there, he was asked to also repair a steam engine. Now, the original Newcomen engine design was not very efficient or very reliable, and Watt was convinced he could improve upon it. He secured funding from 2 Scottish financial backers, but unfortunately spent lots of money trying to secure patents and struggled to make his product. The locally based iron workers also couldn't deliver the precision engineering that he required to keep his dream alive. And so Watt gave up and took up full-time work for 8 years to keep his dream alive. During this time, a businessman from England by the name of Matthew Boulton acquired the patent rights for Watt's bankrupt partner. Watt soon began a new partnership with Boulton, and he moved to Birmingham in England. Boulton then helped him with the precision iron manufacturer, who was based in Wales, and the Watt steam engine was produced within just 2 years. And Boulton and Watt's remarkable partnership went on to last for 25 years. So what can we learn from that story from Watt? Well, let's think about Watt as an entrepreneur in the field of technology. During his time, Scotland's tech ecosystem did not have what he needed. A successful technology ecosystem needs entrepreneurs with ideas. It needs investors. It needs highly educated talent. It needs government support. And it needs the willing. Watt had a great idea to revolutionize an existing market. He found angel investors, but was unable to build a working product. He then had to bootstrap his own funding for 8 years and eventually built the product in England with his new investor. Boulton, the English investor, had also introduced Watt to the precision iron manufacturer with transferable experience from building cannons, believe it or not. Great investors don't just provide cash, they provide broader experience of running businesses and the contacts to speed up development. Once Watt had that talent to build his product, the right partners, and the right investor, within 2 years, he did what had taken him over 11 years in Scotland. The story has a strong parallel to the AI marketplace in Scotland today. If we fail to invest in great AI business ideas in Scotland, we risk our entrepreneurs leaving for countries and investors with deeper pockets and perhaps a greater appetite for risk. We need to foster an environment where investors can easily find, easily identify ideas in which to invest. On a macro level, we also need to attract inward investment from existing companies in this space. Companies with AI talent bringing new expertise into the country. And with the enlarged talent pool, we become an attraction for more inward investment. Wouldn't it be great to see a DeepMind or an OpenAI with an office in Scotland? Not having the right talent really held back James Watt. He couldn't build his steam engine in Scotland. Today, we need to welcome new companies and people with AI skills to augment AI talent already being produced by our incredible education system. Universities are a key part of any successful tech ecosystem. And we are so fortunate to be here today among some of the world's leading educational establishments in AI. For example, Edinburgh University has a globally regarded AI department. Dundee's Life Sciences department, where AI-powered research is done, is also world-renowned. I could go on, Aberdeen, Glasgow, Strathclyde, you name it. But I also think creative schools like the Glasgow School of Art and in Dundee provide that design talent that we need in that ecosystem to support. I would say that, wouldn't I? I'm a technology designer. Scotland has phenomenally creative schools and universities, and we need to help them attract and develop as many AI and design literate graduates as possible. We also need to continue to inform the debate in secondary and further education, and that's exactly what the Scottish AI Alliance is doing. As job roles change or disappear, we need to be ready to upskill everyone so no one gets left behind. And you saw and will hear about some of the things that we're doing to support that endeavour. But there's one significant difference in today's tech ecosystem to that of James Watt's in 1770, that being government support. Today, we are fortunate to benefit from both UK and Scottish government support. The Scottish AI Alliance itself is funded by the Scottish Government, and we're able to tap into other organisations like the London-based Turing Institute and their amazing resources, to mention just one. We've never had so much day-to-day support available from our government. We have to maximise the investments that they're making, and also we have to ensure it is our responsibility to use that for good, to promote the ideas that make Scotland fairer, greener, and more prosperous and outward-looking. Scotland is rightly proud of innovators like James Watt. Yet 250 years ago, we didn't fully maximise the opportunity that his idea brought. We have a rich history of innovation. We're the land of his steam engine, Alexander Fleming's penicillin, Thomas Sutherland's HSBC. That one doesn't get a lot of mentions. Dolly the sheep, my favourite one, Aberdeen University's MRI scanner, and many more. We're a nation of leaders, storytellers, and adventurers. Scotland has the capability to create a world-class AI tech ecosystem and can push Scottish-built businesses and ideas onto the world stage. As we continue our journey with AI, it is the people who will put Scotland at the heart of the AI revolution. And we must make the country ready for AI business. Thank you very much indeed for listening. I hope you enjoyed that, and I am going to take some questions.
Thanks so much, Catriona. That was awesome. Thank you very much indeed.
Bit of history in the morning.
Yeah, it's great. Love hearing about James Watt and the incredible inventions and innovators, you know, that Scotland's held. So loads of questions have come through on the online platform. Thanks so much for that. And I feel like whilst I could just do it like how I would do it from a journalist, I actually think that I should do it more democratic and maybe go for the most upvoted question first, and then trickle down, because I know we've not got that much time. So 15 people have upvoted this, which is, there's 3 billion people that do not have access to the internet, and even more, we don't have the assets to be engaged directly with these tools. Are we leaving these folks behind, and do we consider them the new Luddites?
What a fantastic question. I don't know who put that one in there, but well done. I think it's something that is incredibly incumbent on the societies who have access to this to ensure that we have democratization of AI. It absolutely, whenever there is an industrial revolution, it leaves people behind, and there are laggards. And I think with this, we need to look back at history, and we need to avoid that. Now, organizations like United Nations and the OECD are already thinking this through. They're already thinking about how can we support more fully. And if I look at, let's look at Elon Musk. If I look at the satellite technology that he is creating around the globe that allow communication where there is limited infrastructure, I think we'll see a lot more advancement there. And I think we'll see a more broad democratization of at least communication. And it's incumbent on large organizations like the UN and the OECD to make sure that we democratize that and we don't leave people behind. Because I completely agree, it's a dreadful conundrum. It always is when there's advancements like this in first world countries.
I think something that often gets forgotten about as well is that some people just don't want to be involved with technology at all. Like my wife, for instance, who will happily just leave her phone behind for days and go out on walks and stuff like that.
Does she?
But that's for a different conference. Anyway.
How does that go down with you?
Okay, the next highest question is, what are the likely impacts of AI on inequalities in Scotland, given the current Scottish scenario? What are the advantages and disadvantages of AI in solving many complex problems across social, digital, education, mental and physical health topics? What would be the buy-in from the Scottish population?
Well, I think this goes back to where I was talking about the incredible support that we have from the Scottish Government. I've never seen anything like it, and I know Tom's going to refer later on to the Scottish data and AI strategy, but I'm delighted that they're taking this incredibly seriously. Delighted that 2 years ago they spotted the opportunity to create the Scottish AI Alliance and create the strategy. Now, it's incumbent on the Scottish AI Alliance to work with civil society, educators, industry, to ensure that we are building responsible and ethical AI. So there's a number of ways we're doing that, a number of work streams. And I think as you get to know more about our activities today and tomorrow, I think you will feel some comfort that we're on this and that we have a plan. And the fabulous Steph and Gillian have created, as I said, that startup with exactly the right ideals to help us introduce AI in an ethical way across Scotland.
And talking about the buy-in, you mentioned in your keynote about, I guess, the financial incentive behind investing in AI. Is that one of the main drivers, or is it, I mean, it's a personal question, or is it, is it the fact that it's, it could impact the health, education, social, economic, situations?
I think that the Scottish Government in particular has always been citizen-centred, putting humans at the centre of any technological innovation. And I think it has been incumbent on them to ensure citizen centricity. So I refer to standards, and I get a little bit boring about standards, but when I designed the UK government's online standards, it ensured that anybody could use all of those government websites. When you apply for a passport, when you get your driver's license, when you fill in your tax return, when you want to do some planning, and you go to the planning portal, all of those websites in 2005 were all completely different, inaccessible for people with disabilities. And so what we did was, a group of us sat down with the UK government and created a user-centered design approach to design the standards for those. All of those web interfaces are accessible. And so extrapolating that standard that we build into what we need to do now with AI, I think as long as we stick to some of the standards and we retain that focus on AI for all, for citizen-centric design, for educating people, I think that it's going to be, I think that's where we need to go. Let's use standards to build this effectively.
Thank you. Now, what if the simulation that you describe isn't a matrix-style world, but that the content that we consume is simulated? Simulated art and entertainment personalized to us. Simulated news personalized to us. In that world, how do we maintain sight of the truth? Yeah. I think that question has been avoided because it's called the word the matrix.
Yes, I like that. Well, I think what's really interesting, and I think you mentioned it earlier on, is this synthetic media explosion that we're seeing. Disinformation is something that is a very real problem. And I think that unless we start to create the standards, then we're going to have manipulation of our citizens in Scotland. So when I talk about manipulation, I talk about the ability, for instance, you get those crank calls, don't you? Those calls where people tell you that your bank account's been hacked, and they target older people. And I think it's absolutely dreadful. But if you think about
which my dad responds to,
building,
immediately passive.
If you build those models using behavioural data that you've gathered, you can build really personalised, dreadfully manipulative technology. And I do think that synthetic media, we need to, and I know Adobe is working on this, we do need to create a standard for that, a trustworthy source. I do hope that the BBC is, for instance, going to be supporting some of that activity. Because without understanding the unparalleled synthetic media and the disinformation out there, you know, what are citizens to do? Who are they to believe? So manipulation is a really big issue, and I think we need to look at watermarks on images, and we need to look at source data for text. So
I think, and we will be covering that later this afternoon in the news discussion that we've got with David Castle from the BBC.
But I'm not sure anybody actually believes we're in a simulation. Apart from Nick Bostrom, perhaps.
And finally, I think, because we've only got time for maybe one more question or so, which could Scotland be a global leader in ethical and high-integrity AI? And I think I know what you're going to say there. But I think what I would caveat to that is just, as part of that, how important is ensuring that there's not a brain drain, like you've mentioned a couple of times in the keynote, and how do we ensure that top young talent stays in Scotland, which is something that I wouldn't say agonise over, but I think about regularly, you know, how to basically encourage young people to come to Scotland and study and operate and not flee to places like California.
Well, I don't think we've got as much of an issue in attracting the talent. I think our universities and our academic institutions in Scotland are phenomenal.
But staying afterwards.
But staying afterwards is where we've got the trick, right? And I think that goes back to can we have an open AI office in Scotland? Can we have a DeepMind? Can we have some of those? Can we attract industry that is going to support our ecosystem? Now, I was a startup entrepreneur. So at the age of 26, I decided to set up an agency that helped Sky design all of their interactive TV, that built the first online bank in the UK. And at 26, I walked around Scotland and tried to get funding and got nothing. I had to go to London to get the VC investment. I don't want that to be the case for this. I want us to create that ecosystem of investors, the inward investment that we require from those large organizations that will help us retain the talent here. And I think it's about creating that and really driving that ecosystem. And I can't wait to do that. And one of the things that I said in my statement when I was interviewing as chair was, I can bring a lot of that experience, and that's exactly what I intend to do. Help support the ecosystem here so that our amazing educators can retain that fantastic talent they've taught in Scotland.
Thank you so much, Catriona. And I'll just squeeze in one last question, because why not? It's been avoided quite a lot, actually. We're still struggling to deal with problems that the internet introduces, especially when there are no existing incentives to solve them. One example would be the scale of stolen bike online, Gumtree, etc., make just as much revenue from a legitimate ad as a stolen one, and there's no regulatory pressure to change. What can we do to ensure we can quickly spot similar problems introduced by AI, in particular when there are no existing incentives to solve them and no regulatory pressure?
Regulation, regulation, regulation. I mean, the EU AI Act, which is hopefully going to be here before the end of this year or early 24, really talks about how organisations who interact with the EU organisations, any company in the EU, even if they're not in the EU, if they interact with any company in the EU, they have to adhere to the AI Act that will be enshrined in law in 2024 or the end of this year. And I think that regulation that they're building is going to be really essential, and they will fine organisations who don't do it. So they're talking about the board of any organisation being personally liable for any wrongdoings, according to the EU AI Act. And that fine can be anywhere up to 10% of the revenue of the organisation. Now, if you hit them hard and you hit them in the pockets, then the board is going to take note, and the board is going to absolutely put pressure on the organisation to change things. So I think it's all about regulation, Nick, and I'm very, very excited about that EU AI Act and some of the UK the standards that we're developing and the regulation that we're considering in the UK.
Thanks so much, Catriona.
Thanks
so much. Congratulations as well as becoming the new chair of the Scottish
Thank you very much indeed.
So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Catriona Campbell, everyone.
Thanks.